Sarah Martinez walked through the hangar with her head held high, even though she could hear the whispers behind her back. The other pilots pointed at her chosen aircraft and shook their heads in disbelief. She had picked the oldest, most beaten-up jet in the entire fleet for her final training mission. The aircraft looked terrible. Paint was peeling off its wings, and there were visible patches where repairs had been made over the years. Most pilots would have been embarrassed to fly such a machine, especially during their graduation exercise from the Elite Fighter Pilot Academy. Sarah's classmates had all chosen the newest, shiniest jets available. Their aircraft gleamed under the hangar lights, looking like they had just rolled off the assembly line. "Look at Martinez," whispered Jake Thompson, one of the top students in their class. "She must be crazy to pick that old piece of junk. Does she want to fail on purpose?" Another pilot, Lisa Chin, laughed quietly. "Maybe she thinks being different will impress the instructors. But flying a museum piece won't help her when she needs real speed and power out there." Sarah pretended not to hear their comments, but each word stung. She had worked twice as hard as anyone else to get to this point. While her classmates came from military families or had expensive private flight training, Sarah had grown up in a small town where seeing an airplane was rare. Her father worked at a gas station, and her mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. Every opportunity she had earned through pure determination and countless hours of study. The other students had never taken her seriously. They saw her as an outsider who somehow got lucky enough to be accepted into the program. When she struggled with advanced maneuvers early in training, they whispered that she didn't belong there. When she gradually improved and started outperforming many of them, they claimed she was just trying too hard to prove herself. Now, on the most important day of their training, Sarah had made a choice that seemed to confirm their worst opinions about her judgment. The graduation flight was designed to test everything they had learned. Students would fly complex missions that simulated real combat situations. Their performance would determine their final rankings and influence their future assignments in the military. Most students had spent weeks studying the specifications of different aircraft, choosing the ones with the best speed, maneuverability, and weapon systems. The newest jets had advanced computers, superior radar systems, and engines that could push them to incredible speeds. Why would anyone choose an old aircraft that looked ready for retirement? Sarah had her reasons, but she kept them to herself. 3 months earlier, she had been studying in the academy's library when she discovered an old maintenance log that someone had left behind. The log contained detailed records for every aircraft in the fleet, including one that caught her attention immediately. The beaten-up jet that everyone ignored had a history that nobody else seemed to know about. According to the records, this particular aircraft had been used for special operations that were classified at the highest levels. It had been modified extensively, though the changes were not visible from the outside. The engine had been completely rebuilt with experimental technology that provided incredible power while running almost silently. The navigation system included equipment that was decades ahead of anything in the standard jets. Most importantly, this aircraft had never failed to complete a mission. The maintenance chief who worked on this jet was an old man named Frank Rodriguez. He had been servicing military aircraft for over 30 years and had a reputation for knowing every bolt and wire in every machine. Sarah had approached him carefully, asking casual questions about different aircraft. When she mentioned the old jet, Frank's eyes lit up in a way that told her she was onto something special. "That bird has stories," Frank had said quietly, looking around to make sure nobody else was listening. "Most people see the ugly paint job and assume it's worthless. But I've worked on her for 15 years, and I can tell you she's got secrets that would surprise everyone in this place." Frank wouldn't tell her everything, but he dropped enough hints for Sarah to understand that this aircraft was far more than it appeared to be. He mentioned that certain modifications had been made for special requirements, and that the jet had been retired from active duty, not because it was worn out, but because it was too advanced for regular operations. Sarah spent weeks researching everything she could find about the aircraft's history. She discovered that it had been part of an experimental program called Project Ghosthawk, designed to create stealth fighters that could operate deep behind enemy lines. The project had been canceled due to budget cuts, but a few prototype aircraft had been kept for training purposes. This jet was one of them. The more Sarah learned, the more convinced she became that choosing this aircraft could give her an enormous advantage. While her classmates would be flying predictable machines with well-known capabilities, she would have access to technology that could surprise everyone, including the instructors who would be evaluating their performance. But keeping her discovery secret meant enduring the mockery of her fellow students. As she performed her pre-flight inspection, she could hear them making jokes about her choice. Some suggested that she was trying to make excuses for poor performance before the mission even began. Others wondered if she had simply given up on competing seriously with the rest of the class. "I give her credit for being original," said Mike Foster, another top student. "But originality won't help when she's trying to keep up with real fighter jets. That old bucket will probably fall apart before she reaches the first checkpoint." Sarah completed her inspection methodically, checking every system twice. The aircraft's exterior might look rough, but everything functioned perfectly. As she climbed into the cockpit, she felt a strange sense of connection with the machine. This jet had been flown by pilots who had faced real dangers and completed impossible missions. Now it would carry her through the most important test of her life. The other students were already starting their engines, filling the hangar with the roar of powerful jets. Sarah's aircraft started with a whisper, its modified engine running so quietly that some people didn't realize it was operational. She smiled to herself, knowing that this was just the first sign of the surprises that awaited everyone who had underestimated her choice. The morning briefing took place in a room filled with tension and excitement. Commander Patricia Williams stood at the front, addressing the 12 graduating pilots who would participate in the final exercise. She was a legendary pilot herself, with over 20 years of experience and a reputation for being impossible to impress. Students knew that earning her approval meant everything for their future careers. "Today's mission will test every skill you have learned during your training," Commander Williams announced. "You will navigate through a series of checkpoints while avoiding simulated enemy radar. Your objective is to reach the final target zone undetected and complete a precision strike. The student with the best overall performance will receive the Distinguished Graduate Award and first choice of assignment." Sarah listened carefully to every detail of the mission. The course would take them through mountainous terrain where radar coverage created dangerous blind spots. Pilots would need to use their aircraft's capabilities cleverly, flying low to avoid detection while maintaining enough speed to reach checkpoints within strict time limits. The final challenge would require attacking a heavily defended target that could only be reached by flying through a narrow canyon. As the briefing continued, Sarah noticed several instructors whispering among themselves while looking in her direction. She realized they were discussing her choice of aircraft with obvious confusion. One instructor shook his head and made notes on his clipboard, probably documenting what he expected to be a poor decision that would result in failure. After the briefing, students had 30 minutes to perform final preparations before takeoff. Sarah walked to her aircraft while listening to her classmates discuss their strategies. Most planned to fly fast and high, relying on their jet's advanced radar systems to navigate efficiently. They were confident that superior technology would give them decisive advantages over older equipment. "Martinez is going to learn a hard lesson today," Jake Thompson said loudly enough for Sarah to hear. "This isn't about being brave or making statements. It's about results, and that old jet can't deliver what modern warfare requires." Sarah climbed into her cockpit and began her startup sequence. The instrument panel looked different from the standard aircraft she had trained on. Instead of the usual displays, she found screens that showed information in ways she had never seen before. Frank Rodriguez had mentioned that the jet included experimental systems, but she hadn't expected such advanced technology hidden beneath the worn exterior. As she studied the unfamiliar displays, Sarah realized that her aircraft possessed capabilities that far exceeded anything in the standard fleet. The radar system could operate in modes that would make her virtually invisible to enemy detection. The navigation computer could calculate routes that other aircraft couldn't even attempt. Most surprisingly, the targeting system included features that would allow precision strikes under conditions where other jets would be helpless. The tower gave clearance for takeoff, and the graduation exercise officially began. Sarah watched her classmates taxi onto the runway in their gleaming jets. Their aircraft looked magnificent as they accelerated into the sky, leaving impressive vapor trails against the clear blue morning. The other pilots flew with obvious confidence, knowing they had chosen the best equipment available. When Sarah's turn came, she advanced her throttles smoothly and felt the mysterious power of the modified engine. The aircraft accelerated faster than she had expected, reaching takeoff speed in a distance that surprised the ground crew. As she climbed away from the airfield, she activated the stealth systems that Frank had hinted about during their conversations. Immediately, Sarah understood why this aircraft had been part of a classified project. Her radar signature disappeared almost completely, making her invisible to the tracking systems that monitored all training flights. She could see other student aircraft on her displays, but she knew they couldn't see her in return. For the first time since choosing this jet, Sarah felt completely confident in her decision. The first checkpoint required flying through a valley where enemy radar simulators created a complex detection pattern. Sarah watched her classmates struggle with this challenge, forced to fly awkward routes that kept them in safe zones but slowed their progress significantly. Several students were shot down by the simulation when they failed to avoid detection areas correctly. Sarah approached the same valley using capabilities that her classmates couldn't imagine. Her stealth systems allowed her to fly directly through zones that were deadly to conventional aircraft. She completed the checkpoint faster than anyone else while remaining completely undetected. The controlling radar operators couldn't understand how she had vanished from their screens, assuming their equipment had malfunctioned. At the second checkpoint, pilots faced a navigation challenge that required precise flying through a series of narrow passages between mountain peaks. The standard approach involved using GPS guidance and radar mapping to find safe routes, but Sarah discovered that her aircraft's experimental navigation system could see through weather and terrain in ways that made the challenge almost effortless. While her classmates struggled with limited visibility and dangerous wind conditions, Sarah flew with confidence through passages that seemed impossible to navigate safely. Her aircraft's systems painted a perfect picture of the terrain ahead, allowing her to maintain high speed while others were forced to slow down for safety reasons. By the third checkpoint, instructors monitoring the exercise were beginning to notice unusual performance patterns. Sarah's aircraft was completing objectives faster than should have been possible with standard equipment, but their tracking systems couldn't maintain consistent contact with her jet. Some instructors suspected equipment problems, while others wondered if Sarah had discovered techniques that weren't covered in standard training. Commander Williams was personally monitoring the exercise from the control center. She had seen thousands of students complete similar missions over her career, and she recognized when something extraordinary was happening. Sarah's performance was defying every prediction about how that old aircraft should behave in challenging conditions. "Get me the maintenance records for Martinez's aircraft," Commander Williams ordered one of her assistants. "I want to know everything about that machine's history and capabilities." As the mission continued, Sarah felt a growing connection with her aircraft that went beyond normal pilot training. The jet seemed to anticipate her intentions, responding to control inputs with a precision that made complex maneuvers feel natural. She began to understand why this aircraft had been chosen for special operations that required capabilities beyond normal military requirements. The fourth checkpoint tested pilots' ability to conduct electronic warfare while maintaining stealth profiles. Most students found this challenge nearly impossible, as standard aircraft couldn't operate their jamming systems without revealing their locations to enemy sensors. Sarah's aircraft handled this problem with systems that her classmates had never imagined possible. She began to realize that choosing this jet hadn't just given her better equipment. It had connected her with a legacy of pilots who had pushed the boundaries of what was considered achievable in military aviation. Every system in the aircraft represented years of development aimed at creating capabilities that could succeed where conventional approaches would fail. The control center became increasingly busy as the exercise progressed. Radar operators were reporting strange readings that didn't match any known aircraft signatures. One student pilot seemed to be appearing and disappearing from their screens in ways that defied explanation. Technical personnel ran diagnostics on their equipment, assuming that multiple systems were malfunctioning simultaneously. Commander Williams studied the tracking data with growing fascination. Sarah Martinez was completing the course with performance metrics that shouldn't have been possible with any aircraft in their training fleet. Her speed between checkpoints exceeded what standard jets could achieve, yet she was maintaining perfect stealth profiles that kept her hidden from detection systems. "Ma'am, we're having trouble maintaining radar contact with student Martinez," reported Sergeant Davis, the senior radar operator. "Her aircraft keeps disappearing from our screens, but then she shows up at checkpoints ahead of schedule. Our equipment might be having problems." Commander Williams walked over to examine the displays personally. She had spent years working with experimental aircraft programs before taking her current position. The pattern she was seeing looked familiar, though she couldn't immediately remember where she had encountered similar capabilities before. Meanwhile, Sarah was approaching the 5th checkpoint, which presented the most difficult challenge yet. Students had to navigate through a simulated surface-to-air missile field while maintaining specific altitudes and speeds. The exercise was designed to push pilots and their aircraft to absolute limits, testing both technical capabilities and decision-making under extreme pressure. Most of Sarah's classmates were struggling desperately with this section. The missile simulators were programmed to lock onto any aircraft that flew predictable patterns or maintained steady altitudes for more than a few seconds. Standard evasion techniques required constant maneuvering that made it nearly impossible to maintain course toward the checkpoint. Jake Thompson was forced to abort his approach after being hit by 3 different missile systems. His advanced jet simply couldn't perform the complex maneuvers required while maintaining the speed necessary to complete the checkpoint within time limits. Lisa Chen managed to avoid being shot down, but her cautious approach put her far behind the mission schedule. Sarah entered the missile field using tactics that her classmates had never seen before. Her aircraft's stealth systems made her invisible to most of the simulated weapons, while its maneuverability allowed her to fly patterns that confused the few systems that could detect her presence. She completed the checkpoint in record time while avoiding every simulated threat. The performance was so impressive that several instructors assumed their simulation equipment had failed. No standard aircraft could have survived the missile field while maintaining the speed and precision that Sarah was demonstrating. Technical teams began checking their systems for programming errors or hardware malfunctions. Back at the academy, Frank Rodriguez was in his workshop when he received an urgent call from the control center. They wanted immediate information about any modifications or special equipment installed on the aircraft that Sarah was flying. Frank smiled to himself, knowing that people were finally beginning to understand what that old jet could really do. "Sir, that aircraft has been in our fleet for 15 years. Frank told the nervous instructor who called him. "All maintenance has been performed according to standard procedures. If you're seeing unusual performance, maybe the pilot is just better than you expected." Frank's answer was technically truthful, but he didn't mention the classified modifications that had been made to the aircraft during its original construction. He had signed agreements that prevented him from discussing certain aspects of the jet's capabilities, even with other military personnel who lacked appropriate clearances. As Sarah flew toward the final checkpoint, she realized that her aircraft was teaching her things that weren't covered in any training manual. The experimental system seemed to anticipate threats and opportunities in ways that helped her make decisions faster and more accurately than ever before. She felt like she was flying with the accumulated experience of every pilot who had ever used this aircraft for dangerous missions. The 6th and final checkpoint required attacking a heavily defended target located deep within a narrow canyon. The approach was extremely dangerous, with simulated anti-aircraft guns positioned along the canyon walls and electronic jamming systems that could disable standard navigation equipment. Most students would need multiple attempts to complete this challenge, and some might not succeed at all. Sarah studied the target area using her aircraft's advanced sensors. The systems revealed details about the canyon defenses that weren't visible to standard equipment. She could see weak points in the coverage patterns and identify approach routes that would minimize her exposure to defensive fire. More importantly, her stealth capabilities would allow her to reach the target before defenders realized she was approaching. She descended toward the canyon entrance, while her classmates were still struggling with earlier checkpoints. The narrow passage required precise flying, with rocky walls just meters away from her wingtips. Any mistake in navigation or control would result in immediate disaster, but Sarah felt completely confident in her aircraft's capabilities. The defensive systems activated as she entered the canyon, filling the air with simulated gunfire and electronic interference. Sarah's stealth technology neutralized most of the threats automatically, while her advanced navigation systems kept her on course despite intensive jamming attempts. She flew through the canyon faster than the defensive computers could track, reaching the target before they could coordinate an effective response. The precision strike required hitting a target just 3 meters wide from a distance of over 2 kilometers while flying at high speed. Through electronic interference, Sarah's targeting system locked onto the objective with accuracy that exceeded anything possible with standard equipment. She released her simulated weapons and watched them impact the target with perfect precision. As Sarah flew back toward the academy, she reflected on everything that had happened during the mission. The aircraft had performed beyond her wildest expectations, but she realized that its true value wasn't just in the advanced technology. The jet represented a connection to pilots who had faced real dangers and found ways to succeed against impossible odds. Her radio crackled with messages from the control center, requesting her position and status. Sarah realized that her stealth capabilities had made it difficult for them to track her throughout the entire exercise. She smiled, knowing that her classmates and instructors were probably confused about how she had managed to complete the mission so quickly. When she landed back at the academy, Sarah could see crowds of people waiting on the flight line. Students, instructors, and technical personnel had gathered to see the pilot who had achieved performance results that nobody could explain. As she taxied toward the parking area, she noticed Commander Williams walking toward her aircraft with a very serious expression. Sarah shut down her engines and climbed out of the cockpit to find herself surrounded by confused faces. Her classmates stared at the old aircraft with completely different expressions than they had shown that morning. The mockery and dismissive comments had been replaced by genuine bewilderment and grudging respect. "How did you do that?" Jake Thompson asked, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Our tracking system showed you completing checkpoints before some of us even reached them. That old jet shouldn't have been able to keep up with our aircraft, let alone outperform them." Lisa Chen approached more cautiously, studying the aircraft's exterior with new interest.
"I've been analyzing the performance data from my cockpit displays.
"According to my sensors, you disappeared completely during several portions of the course. Then you reappeared at locations that should have been impossible to reach in the time available." Sarah removed her helmet and looked at the crowd that had gathered around her aircraft. She could see instructors taking notes and technical personnel examining every detail of the jet's exterior. Camera crews were documenting everything, probably for later analysis by people who would want to understand what they had witnessed. Commander Williams pushed through the crowd and approached Sarah directly. The commander's expression was serious, but Sarah detected something that might have been approval in her eyes. After 20 years of evaluating student pilots, Commander Williams had never seen performance like what Sarah had just demonstrated. "Martinez, I need you to come with me immediately," Commander Williams said quietly. "We need to discuss your aircraft and your performance during today's exercise. There are questions that require immediate answers." Sarah followed Commander Williams toward the Academy's administrative building, while trying to process everything that had happened. She had known that choosing the old aircraft would surprise people, but she hadn't expected the level of confusion and interest that her performance had generated. As they walked, she could hear her classmates arguing among themselves about how her results could be possible. Commander Williams led Sarah into a secure conference room where several high-ranking officers were already waiting. Sarah recognized some faces from Academy ceremonies, but others were strangers who carried themselves with the authority of people involved in classified programs. The atmosphere in the room was tense, with an undercurrent of excitement that suggested important decisions were being made. "Sit down, Martinez," Commander Williams said, gesturing toward a chair at the center of the table. "Before we continue, I need to ask you some direct questions about your knowledge of the aircraft you flew today. What did you know about its capabilities before you made your selection?" Sarah chose her words carefully, knowing that her answer could affect her entire future career. "I researched the maintenance records and discovered that the aircraft had been modified for special operations. I believed it might have capabilities that weren't obvious from its appearance, but I didn't fully understand what those capabilities were until I flew the mission today." One of the unfamiliar officers leaned forward with obvious interest. "Who gave you access to maintenance records that contained information about classified modifications? That information should have been restricted to personnel with appropriate security clearances." Sarah explained how she had found the old maintenance log in the library and her subsequent conversations with Frank Rodriguez. She emphasized that Frank had never revealed specific details about the aircraft's capabilities, only hinting that it was more advanced than it appeared. The officers exchanged glances that suggested they were familiar with the jet's history. Commander Williams opened a thick folder and spread several documents across the table. Sarah could see photographs of her aircraft from different time periods, along with technical specifications that contained many sections marked with classification stamps. The paperwork revealed a history that was far more complex than anything she had imagined. This aircraft was part of Project Ghosthawk, a classified program that developed advanced stealth fighters for deep penetration missions, Commander Williams explained. The project was officially canceled 12 years ago, but several prototype aircraft were retained for evaluation purposes. Your jet is one of only 3 Ghosthawk prototypes still in existence. Sarah studied the documents with growing amazement. The technical specifications revealed capabilities that were decades ahead of standard military aircraft. The stealth systems, navigation equipment, and targeting computers represented billions of dollars in research and development. No wonder her performance had seemed impossible to observers who didn't understand what they were witnessing. The question now, continued another officer, is what we do with this situation. Your performance today has demonstrated capabilities that we've been trying to keep classified, but your success also proves that the Ghosthawk technology could be valuable for current military requirements. Sarah realized that she had stumbled into something much larger than a training exercise. Her choice of aircraft had inadvertently revealed the existence of advanced technology that military leaders were still deciding how to use. The old jet that everyone had mocked was actually one of the most sophisticated aircraft ever built. Commander Williams closed the folder and looked directly at Sarah. Martinez, your performance today was extraordinary by any measure. You completed the course faster than any student in Academy history, while demonstrating capabilities that we didn't think were possible with available equipment. But your success has also created complications that extend far beyond normal graduation procedures. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Commander Williams to continue. Sarah could sense that important decisions were being made about her future, but she didn't understand what options were being considered. Her graduation exercise had somehow turned into a demonstration of classified technology that wasn't supposed to exist. We have 3 options, Commander Williams said finally. First, we could classify your entire performance and restrict any discussion of what happened today. You would receive standard graduation honors, but you would be assigned to conventional duties that don't involve advanced aircraft. Second, we could bring you into the classified programs that deal with experimental technology. That would require extensive security clearances and commitments that would affect your entire career. Third, we could use your success as justification for reactivating the Ghosthawk program with you as one of the primary test pilots. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of these choices. That morning, she had been worried about passing her graduation exercise and earning respect from classmates who had never taken her seriously. Now she was being offered opportunities that she had never dreamed possible, but she understood that each option would require sacrifices and commitments that would change her life completely. I need time to consider these options, Sarah said carefully. This morning, I thought I was just trying to prove that I could succeed with equipment that others had dismissed. I didn't realize I was flying technology that could affect national security programs. Commander Williams nodded approvingly. That's exactly the kind of thoughtful response we hope to hear. Take all the time you need to make your decision, but remember that your performance today has already changed everything. You've proven that the Ghosthawk technology works better than our most optimistic projections suggested. That success creates opportunities, but it also creates responsibilities. As Sarah left the conference room, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just a few hours. The classmates who had mocked her choice were now asking how she had achieved impossible results. The instructors who had expected her to fail were now discussing her future in classified programs. Most importantly, she had discovered that taking risks and trusting her instincts could lead to opportunities that exceeded anything she had imagined possible. 3 days passed before Sarah was called back to meet with Commander Williams. During that time, the Academy buzzed with rumors about what had happened during the graduation exercise. Some students claimed that Sarah had somehow cheated or received unauthorized assistance. Others insisted that the performance data must have been wrong because no pilot could achieve the results that were being reported. Sarah spent those days researching everything she could find about experimental aircraft programs and the responsibilities that came with classified military assignments. She realized that accepting advanced opportunities would mean giving up the normal military career she had originally planned. Instead of flying standard missions with regular squadrons, she would be working with technology that couldn't be discussed with family, friends, or fellow pilots who lacked proper security clearances. The decision became more complicated when she learned that several defense contractors had requested permission to interview her. Her performance had impressed people who specialized in developing advanced military technology, and they wanted to understand how she had maximized the capabilities of equipment that they had designed. Some companies were offering positions that would pay far more than military service, but would require leaving the academy and abandoning her commitment to serve her country. When Sarah returned to the conference room, she found Commander Williams waiting with a new group of officers. These individuals carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who dealt with the military's most sensitive programs. Their presence suggested that her decision would have implications extending far beyond her personal career choices. Martinez, before you tell us your decision, there are additional facts that you need to understand, Commander Williams began. Your performance 3 days ago has been analyzed by our top technical experts. They've concluded that you didn't just fly the Ghosthawk successfully, you actually achieved performance levels that exceeded the original design specifications. Sarah was surprised by this revelation. She had assumed that her success was simply due to the aircraft's advanced capabilities, not any special skills on her part. The idea that she had somehow enhanced the jet's performance beyond what its designers had intended was both exciting and intimidating. One of the new officers opened a laptop computer and showed Sarah detailed analysis charts from her flight. The data revealed that she had used the aircraft's systems in combinations that the original test pilots had never attempted. Her instinctive flying techniques had unlocked capabilities that even the engineers who built the jet hadn't fully realized were possible. This raises an important question about the relationship between advanced technology and pilot skills, the officer explained. The Ghosthawk was designed to enhance human capabilities, but your performance suggests that the right pilot can enhance the technology in return. That kind of synergy is exactly what we've been hoping to achieve in next-generation combat aircraft. Commander Williams leaned forward with obvious interest in Sarah's response. The reason we're telling you this is that your decision affects more than just your own career. If you choose to join our experimental programs, you wouldn't just be flying existing technology. You would be helping us develop aircraft capabilities that don't exist anywhere else in the world. Sarah realized that the stakes were much higher than she had originally understood. Her choice wouldn't just determine her future assignments, but could influence the development of technology that would affect national security for decades to come. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity to contribute to advances that could protect countless lives in future conflicts. I've made my decision, Sarah said firmly. I want to join the experimental programs. I understand the risks and restrictions, but I believe this is how I can best serve my country and make use of the opportunities I've been given. The officers exchanged satisfied glances, suggesting that Sarah's choice matched their preferences. Commander Williams smiled for the first time since Sarah had met her, indicating genuine approval of the decision. The atmosphere in the room became more relaxed, as if everyone could finally proceed with plans that had been waiting for Sarah's commitment. Excellent, Commander Williams said. Your first assignment will be working with a team that's developing the next generation of stealth technology. You'll be based at a facility that doesn't officially exist, flying aircraft that won't be acknowledged by any government agency. The work will be challenging, dangerous, and completely classified. Over the following weeks, Sarah completed the security clearance process that would allow her access to some of the military's most sensitive programs. The investigation was thorough, examining every aspect of her background and requiring interviews with people she had known throughout her life. When the clearances were finally approved, she learned that she would be working with technology that was 20 years ahead of anything available to conventional military units. Her new assignment took her to a remote facility in the Nevada desert, where a small team of pilots and engineers were developing aircraft that pushed the boundaries of known technology. The base didn't appear on any maps, and everyone who worked there had committed to careers that couldn't be discussed with anyone outside the program. Sarah's first day at the new facility was overwhelming. The aircraft she would be flying made the Ghosthawk look primitive by comparison. These jets incorporated advances in materials science, propulsion systems, and electronic warfare that created capabilities resembling science fiction more than conventional military equipment. The responsibility of testing such advanced technology was both thrilling and terrifying. During her first briefing, Sarah learned that the experimental program had been established in response to emerging threats from other countries that were developing their own advanced aircraft. The technology she would be testing was designed to maintain American superiority in air combat, but only if the systems could be perfected and produced in sufficient quantities. Your job, explained Colonel Martinez, the program director, is to help us understand how these systems perform under real-world conditions. We can run computer simulations and laboratory tests, but ultimately we need pilots who can push the technology to its limits and identify problems that only become apparent during actual flight operations. Sarah realized that her journey had led her to a position where she could influence the future of military aviation. The classmates who had mocked her choice of aircraft were now serving in conventional assignments, flying standard missions with equipment that was already outdated compared to what she would be testing. Her willingness to take risks and trust her instincts had opened doors to opportunities that most pilots never imagined existed. As she prepared for her first test flight in the new aircraft, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed since that day when everyone laughed at her choice of the old, beaten-up jet. She had learned that appearances could be deceiving, that taking calculated risks often led to unexpected rewards, and that success came to those who were willing to see potential, where others saw only problems. The experimental aircraft awaiting her was sleek, powerful, and equipped with technology that would revolutionize combat aviation. But Sarah knew that its true capabilities would only be realized through the same kind of careful analysis. Intuitive flying and willingness to explore unknown possibilities that had made her successful with the Ghosthawk. 2 years later, Sarah stood before a gathering of the world's top military aviation experts at a classified conference that brought together allies to discuss emerging aerial threats. She was no longer the uncertain student who had been mocked for choosing an old aircraft. Now she was Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, one of the military's most experienced test pilots and a recognized expert in advanced stealth technology. The conference room was filled with generals, defense contractors, and intelligence analysts who were responsible for maintaining air superiority against increasingly sophisticated enemies. Sarah had been invited to present findings from her work with experimental aircraft programs that had revolutionized understanding of what was possible in modern air combat. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began her presentation. 2 years ago, many people believed that stealth technology had reached its practical limits. Today I'm here to demonstrate that we've only begun to explore the possibilities that emerge when advanced systems are operated by pilots who understand how to maximize their potential. The audience watched intently as Sarah displayed video footage from recent test flights that showcased capabilities far beyond anything previously achieved. The aircraft she had been flying could operate in electronic environments that would disable conventional jets, penetrate air defenses that were considered impenetrable, and engage targets with precision that redefined the meaning of surgical strikes. But Sarah's presentation focused on more than just technology demonstrations. She explained how her experience with the original Ghosthawk had taught her that the most important advances came from understanding the relationship between human skills and machine capabilities. The best results were achieved when pilots learned to work with their aircraft as partners, rather than simply operating them as tools. The key insight from our experimental program, Sarah continued, is that advanced technology doesn't replace pilot skills, it amplifies them. When we give sophisticated systems to pilots who know how to explore their full potential, we discover capabilities that even the designers didn't realize were possible. In the audience, Commander Williams smiled with obvious pride. She had retired from the academy the previous year, but remained involved in evaluating experimental programs. Seeing Sarah succeed at the highest levels of military aviation confirmed that her decision to support the young pilot's unconventional choices had been correct. After the presentation, Sarah was approached by representatives from allied countries who wanted to understand how her insights could be applied to their own aircraft development programs. The techniques she had developed for maximizing stealth capabilities were being adopted by air forces around the world, making all friendly nations more effective in potential future conflicts. During a break in the conference, Sarah received a message that made her smile. Frank Rodriguez, the maintenance chief who had first hinted about the Ghosthawk's hidden capabilities, had been awarded a special recognition for his contributions to experimental aircraft programs. His knowledge and discretion had been essential to the success of multiple classified projects over his long career. That evening, Sarah attended a reception where she encountered several of her former classmates who were serving in conventional assignments around the world. Jake Thompson approached her with a mixture of respect and curiosity that was completely different from his attitude during their academy days. "Martinez, I have to admit that you were right about taking risks and trusting your instincts," Jake said. "I've been flying standard missions for 2 years now, and while they're important, they're not nearly as challenging or rewarding as what you're doing. I wish I had been brave enough to make unconventional choices like you did." Lisa Chen joined the conversation with similar sentiments. "I've been following news about advanced aircraft development, and I keep seeing your name mentioned in articles about breakthrough technologies. It's amazing how choosing that old jet led to opportunities that none of us could have imagined." Sarah appreciated their acknowledgement, but she also understood that their paths had been valuable in different ways. The military needed pilots who could execute conventional missions reliably, just as it needed people who were willing to explore unknown possibilities. Everyone's contributions mattered, even if some received more public recognition than others. As the reception continued, Sarah was introduced to a new generation of academy students who had heard stories about her graduation exercise and the opportunities that had resulted from her willingness to think differently. Many young pilots were inspired by her example and were looking for ways to apply similar principles to their own careers. "The most important lesson I learned," Sarah told a group of eager students, "is that success often comes from seeing potential where others see only problems. That old aircraft taught me that appearances can be deceiving, and that the best opportunities sometimes come disguised as challenges that other people want to avoid." Later that week, Sarah returned to the experimental facility where she continued pushing the boundaries of aircraft performance. Her latest project involved testing systems that could revolutionize air combat by integrating artificial intelligence with human decision-making in ways that enhanced both technological and human capabilities. The work was more challenging than ever, but Sarah approached each test flight with the same curiosity and determination that had guided her since that day when she chose the Ghosthawk. She had learned that the key to success was remaining open to possibilities that others might dismiss, and being willing to explore unknown territories where the greatest discoveries were waiting to be made. As she prepared for another experimental flight, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The classmates who had mocked her choice of aircraft had taught her the importance of confidence in her own judgment. The instructors who had doubted her capabilities had motivated her to exceed every expectation. Most importantly, the old aircraft that everyone had, dismissed as worthless, had revealed that the most valuable opportunities often came disguised as things that other people were unwilling to attempt. Commander Williams had been right when she whispered those words that day. She took the Ghosthawk. That choice had changed everything, not just for Sarah's career, but for the advancement of military aviation technology that would protect countless lives in conflicts yet to come. The lesson was simple but profound. Sometimes the best path forward is the one that everyone else is afraid to take. Sarah climbed into her latest experimental aircraft, knowing that each flight brought new discoveries about what was possible when human courage combined with advanced technology. The old Ghosthawk had started her on this journey, but the destination was still being written with every mission that pushed the boundaries of known possibilities. The future belonged to those who were brave enough to explore it, one flight at a time.